My husband lied about buying our teen daughter and her friends alcohol. My husband is a perpetual child, he never really seemed to grow up, and he has a very playful, childish nature. But this time around, his happy-go-lucky attitude led to a child being put in the hospital. When we first met, I loved his free, easygoing nature, but as we've aged and tried to mature, he just seems stuck at the age of 19. Some examples of this is my husband quits jobs very easily, he uses substances pretty recklessly, and all around acts like a teenager instead of a man with 2 kids. Our son is 13, and our daughter is 17, they're great kids and they're super open with us about anything going on in their lives. But as my daughter grows up, my husband seems to have a hard time separating himself from my daughter's teenage antics and being a disciplinarian to her instead of a friend. Such as when a couple of months ago, I found out that my husband had caught my daughter and her friends smoking WD in our shed, and instead of punishing her and kicking the friends out, he joined them. I only found this out months later when our son let the truth slip by accident. Aside from random incidents like this, our kids generally are well behaved, and usually, I am more worried about their dad screwing up than one of them getting into trouble. Well, everything that happened this week just goes to show that I was right to be worried about my husband's never-ending immaturity, and this time he's done real damage. My husband and I decided to take a short vacation together before the kids' school year started, and our house got crazy again. I had a long talk with both of my kids before we left, since it would be the longest that we had ever left them on their own. I went over emergency checklists and grocery lists with them repeatedly, to the point where my husband said I was smothering them. I still had anxiety about leaving my babies, but my husband was supportive, and we had been having a fantastic trip. That was until our daughter called us in a total panic a couple of days into our trip. The time of the call was strange, since it was the middle of the night back in our hometown when my phone rang. When I answered the call, I heard the sounds of chaos and people yelling and scrambling. When my daughter finally spoke, her words were scrambled and she was obviously intoxicated. She tried her best to explain to me that she had brought friends over to the house to drink, and one of them had thrown up all over herself and wasn't breathing. I told her to calm down, call 911 and keep me updated. When I ensured the police were on their way, I hung up and bought an early flight home before waking up my husband and telling him what had happened. He looked so bewildered when I asked him where he thought they got the alcohol. He just gave a worried look and shrugged. I thought that he must be feeling just as scared and surprised as me. I stayed in contact with my daughter the entire time we traveled home. The EMT had gotten her friend to the ER fast enough to pump her stomach, and she was recovering in the hospital with her parents. The entire time we were flying home, my husband didn't seem to be himself. I chalked it up to him being worried about our daughter's friend, but now I see the only thing he was worried about was himself. When we finally got home, my daughter was an apologetic mess. I comforted her even though I was angry at her irresponsibility. I sat her down and asked her seriously where he got the alcohol from. I couldn't believe my eyes when she glanced quickly at my husband and then at the ground. I just knew at that moment that he must have been behind all of this. It made perfect sense, given his personality. I looked at my husband and he glanced down at the floor just like my daughter. I felt like I was scolding another child instead of the father of my kids. I told my daughter to go to her room, and I asked my husband for nothing but the truth. No excuses, no apologies. I just asked him to tell me if he had bought our daughter and her friend alcohol. He started rambling, saying he never meant for them to go overboard, but he just wanted our daughter to feel cool and have fun while we were on vacation. So he bought them multiple handles of vodka since that's what they asked for. I had never been so frustrated, and I started to doubt my entire marriage for the first time. I just asked him why he had trusted teenagers like that and reminded him that he could have unalived another person's child with his stupidity. He looked hurt but said nothing. I was just so angry. I told him that he was an old man now and I was sick of his pathetic attempts to live out his youth through our daughter. That's when he apologized with tears in his eyes and left the room. I wonder if I've been too harsh on him, but it's not like I can be hard on our daughter when it was her own dad that got us into this situation. I will have one more serious talk with my husband about this, and after that conversation, I'll decide if I want to stay in this marriage.